Week 10 of the fantasy football season. Here's tight end start sits every matchup this week. Cincinnati Bengals at the Baltimore Ravens Thursday night. Going to be a shootout once again, I believe, between these two division rivals. We saw it early in the season. And Mike Gesicki, the last couple weeks, he's putting up huge numbers, including last week. I know it was the Raiders, but still for a tight end to go out there, get 100 yards and 2 touchdowns. I know T. Higgins has been out of the lineup and the targets have ticked up for Gesicki. But right now, he's been a big-time threat in this offense for Cincinnati, and he's a start. Mark Andrews a start. Last week was a down game for Mark Andrews, but before that, 3 games in a row, he was putting up nice fantasy points with 9 or more fantasy points. And in a span, had 3 touchdowns in 2 games. So after one down game, I think Andrews gets back on track this week. This Cincinnati Bengal defense can't stop anyone, and they've had trouble with tight ends all season long. We saw Bowers last week find the end zone. In the first meeting of the year, Mark Andrews had a nice ball game versus Bengal team. New York Giants at the Panthers, Munich, Germany ball game. Theo Johnson found the end zone last week, but we have to see a little bit more out of Theo Johnson and Jatavion Sanders for them to both be viable fantasy options. So both these guys were on the waiver wire list. They had good ball games for their respective teams. But Theo Johnson, like I said, he's still the third, fourth option behind neighbors Wan'Dale Robinson, Tyrone Tracy in the offense. And this week, even in a plus matchup at the Panthers, he's tough to trust. Jatavion Sanders, and he's moving up in the pecking order. Deontay Johnson, he was traded away to the Baltimore Ravens. Xavier Legette, he was a first-round rookie draft pick this season. Jalen Coker in there as well. Adam Thielen as well, who's a veteran wide receiver, still could go out there and make plays. Trimble not doing much in the passing game. So Sanders, like I said, 2 out of 3 weeks, double-digit fantasy points, but still have to see a little bit more out of him to be an option. San Francisco 49ers at the Bucs. This is an easy one. George Kittle, he's been amongst the league leaders all season long at the tight end position. He's moved up, obviously, with Brandon Ayuk out. More targets are going to be there for Kittle, and he's been a matchup problem. When he's healthy, he's still one of the best tight ends in the league, and this week in a great matchup at Tampa Bay that can't stop anyone, he's a must-start. K-Dot a must-start. One option in the passing game, in my opinion, for this Tampa Bay Buck team with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin out. And K-Dot, he's got the knack for the end zone. He's a big target, 6'7", 6'8", and him and Baker Mayfield are locked in over the last few weeks. So he's a must-start, even in a tough matchup where most likely Tampa Bay will be playing catch-up majority of the game. Atlanta Falcons at the New Orleans Saints. Kyle Pitts a start. I know last week only 2 fantasy points, and those are the stinkers you're going to get at times from Kyle Pitts. Inconsistencies, but he still has major upside. This week, another indoor game at New Orleans Fast Track, and their defense can't stop anyone. And going back early in the season, he had a double-digit fantasy game versus Saint defense. I think Pitts bounces back, especially if Drake London's out, and more targets his way. Taysom Hill a borderline option. Last week, it was good to see Hill get back to full capacity of touches. He found the end zone, and obviously he's a gadget guy and does a little bit of everything. And now with Dennis Allen out as head coach, I think we could see Hill mixed in even more for this New Orleans Saints team, because they've had trouble generating points and putting points on the board, even though they got off to that great 2-0 start, 91 points in the first 2 games, and ever since then, they can't do anything. Have lost 7 in a row. So I think they're going to try to generate ways to find the end zone in this one, and Taysom Hill will be part of it, but he's a borderline option, because if he doesn't get that touchdown, he's not putting up points. Jawan Johnson, Foster Monroe, there sits for me. I know Monroe found the end zone last week, but that's the thing with Foster Monroe. He'll have weeks where he scores a touchdown, but he'll only get 2 or 3 targets and make 1 or 2 catches, so it's been fluky numbers for him, and it's tough to trust anyone pretty much in this Saint offense besides Alvin Kamara, and now Chris Olave, I believe, won't play in this game with a bad concussion. Denver Broncos at the Chiefs. Adam Troutman is sit. I know Troutman had the big game a few weeks ago for this Denver Bronco team, but the offense is inconsistent. Besides Cortland Sutton, there's no one in that passing game I'm going to have on my fantasy radar for the most part, or I could trust, obviously. Even with 4 teams on bye, Adam Troutman, like I said, one big game all season for this Denver Bronco team, so he's a sit. Travis Kelce, he's a start weekly, number 1 option in the passing game for this Kansas City Chiefs team once again. Him and Patrick Mahomes are back on the same page. He's making big plays down the field. Then he's putting up big numbers, but I still believe Travis Kelce, after this year, we still might see a big decline in his numbers. But right now, even in a tough matchup versus Denver, and like I said, the numbers have gone up since he's getting more targets. He's a must-start. Buffalo Bills at the Indianapolis Colts. Dalton Kincaid, it's been a pretty decent season. I know 5th, 6th round he was going in most fantasy drafts, and actually that was a little bit of a reach, but 7 or more fantasy points weekly, pretty much it is for Dalton Kincaid. So this week, a good matchup at the Indianapolis Colts. Their defense has had trouble with tight ends all season. We saw last week Oliver 60 yards and a touchdown for the Minnesota Vikings. And Dalton Kincaid in an indoor game on a fast track. I think this is a big offensive performance for Buffalo all around. So he's a start. Kyle Granson a sit. I've said this many times in my videos. They just don't target the tight end consistently. Going all the way back to Phillip Rivers or even Andrew Luck at times, the quarterback, not targeting the tight end position for this Indianapolis Colts team. So Granson, we've seen some flashes from him throughout his NFL career. This season, we just haven't seen anything. He's a sit. Pat Freiermuth starting this one. Number 2 option in the passing game. Calvin Austin really emerges for this Pittsburgh Steelers team. But Pat Freiermuth, he's a big target. Russell Wilson throughout his career has liked targeting the tight end position. And this week in a matchup at the Commanders, I think Freiermuth could go out there and have a decent performance. Zach Ertz a borderline option. Ertz last week, it was a down game. And this week, it's a tough matchup, no doubt about it, versus the Pittsburgh Steelers, one of the better defenses in the league. So this game, I think they're going to try to run the football a lot. It's going to be a grinded-out performance by both offenses. And Zach Ertz, still a decent option, but like I said, he's in his mid-30s. Inconsistent weeks are going to be there. And this week, a borderline option. Minnesota Vikings at the Jacksonville Jaguars. TJ Hawkinson, we know he was the top tight end over the last few seasons. Last week returning to the lineup, but he's still on a snap count, and he's not going to be a guy that I'm going to have 100% confidence saying to start him. So he's a borderline option, is Hawkinson. Him and Sam Darnold got to get rapport down, obviously, where they haven't worked together as a quarterback tight end duo, where the last couple seasons Hawkinson and Cousins were dangerous, obviously, duo in that offense for the Minnesota Vikings. So like I said, Hawkinson, if he's off a snap count over the next few weeks and the rapport gets better with Sam Darnold, he's a must-start weekly. But right now, I'm going to limit expectations. He's borderline. Evan Ingram, he's a start weekly for this Jacksonville Jaguar team. Arguably the number 1 option now in the passing game with Christian Kirk out for the season with a broken collarbone. And Brian Thomas, he's been great. No doubt about it for this Jacksonville Jaguar team. But Evan Ingram is going to be benefiting more out of anyone, I believe, from that injury. And he was playing great before the Kirk injury, and he's a start this week. Patriots at the Chicago Bears. Hunter Henry, he's a start each and every week. In my opinion, the number 1 option in the passing game for New England. Him and Drake May have a great rapport. And Hunter Henry, he's been a great tight end when he's had a decent quarterback throughout his career. Going way back with Rivers, with the Chargers, he was putting up numbers, and even at times we saw him put up some decent numbers with Mac Jones at the quarterback position. So Hunter Henry's locked in, he's a start. Cole Kmet a borderline option. Last week, it was a goose egg for Cole Kmet, and this offense is definitely inconsistent. Caleb Williams, he's having the rookie struggles, some good games and a lot of bad games, holding on to the football a lot, taking big hits. And this week here, I know it's a good matchup, like I said, but after coming off a couple games where he's been silent for the most part, besides going back a few weeks ago with a 2-touchdown performance, Cole Kmet is borderline. Tennessee Titans at the Chargers, Chigga Kwango, Josh Wiley, Nick Vannett, all sits weekly. It seems like it's someone else in this tight end room that steps up, has a decent ball game, but they're not consistent options. Like I said, this offense is just trying ways to move the football down the field, and that's why at times they got 3 tight end sets. But like I said, none of these players have fantasy value. None of these guys have been consistent week in and week out, putting up fantasy points, so they all sits in a tough matchup. Hayden Hurst, Will Disley sits. I know Disley, going back a few weeks ago, he had a big ball game on Monday night at the Arizona Cardinals, but besides that, he hasn't done much, and Hayden Hurst hasn't done much. So this offense pretty much is J.K. Dobbins, Lab McConkey, and at times Quentin Johnson having a big ball game. So this week, easy sits all the way around. New York Jets at the Arizona Cardinals, Tyler Conklin is sit. Right now, he's the fifth option in this offense, behind Garrett Wilson, behind Davante Adams, obviously, behind Breece Hall, and even Alan Lazard, if he returns to the lineup, I think he's going to get peppered with some targets as well. So Tyler Conklin, he'll get that touchdown, but he's also a guy where it'll be a ball game where he gets like 2 catches, 12 yards, and finds the end zone. So inconsistency for Conklin. And ever since Davante Adams has been traded to the Jets, his numbers are totally taking a hit. He's a sit. Trey McBride is start each and every week. He was the top 2-3 tight end off the board for fantasy owners. And Trey McBride, the last couple weeks, he's putting up those elite numbers once again. In my opinion, he's the number 1 option in the passing game. He's been more consistent than Marvin Harrison Jr. And him and Kyler Murray, they've been locked in over the last couple seasons with good rapport. So Trey McBride, an easy start. Philadelphia Eagles at the Cowboys, Grant Calcaterra, I think, is going to get the start once again. That hamstring injury has been a bad one for Dallas Goedert. And this Philadelphia Eagle team, I don't believe they don't want to rush Goedert back. They're playing great football. This week, another ball game I believe they should win, even though we know division matchups, especially in the NFC East, anything happen. Grant Caltera, I believe, is going to get the nod once again, but he's going to be a sit for me. Jake Ferguson a start with Cooper Rush in there, quarterback, backup quarterbacks for the most part. They target that tight end position a lot. And Ferguson and Cooper Rush, they've had some rapport working with the second team going back a few seasons ago when Dalton Schultz was there with the Dallas Cowboys. Ferguson was a backup, and Cooper Rush, obviously, and him were practicing a lot in the practices and in training camp. So Ferguson, I think, him and CeeDee Lamb, the only two startable options with Cooper Rush at quarterback. And this week, this Cowboy team could be trailing early and often, and they got to throw the football down the field in garbage time. Detroit Lions at the Texans, Sam Laporta, borderline option. I know he was the top tight end in a lot of fantasy drafts off the board, but the numbers just haven't been there. Sam Laporta, his targets are just going to go up magically, and he's just going to have a big game left and right. Like I said, it's pretty much been St. Brown and the running backs doing damage a majority of the season for this Lion team. So Sam Laporta, after inconsistent weeks, is a borderline option. Dalton Schultz is sit. You thought, obviously, with Stephon Diggs out last week and Nico Collins, who was still out, his numbers were going to go up for Dalton Schultz. But he hasn't done much in this offense the last couple weeks. It's been operating. Tank Dell and Joe Mixon, the only two guys going out there and really putting up numbers for this Texan team. And with Nico Collins possibly returning this week, there's no way to have confidence in Schultz. He's a sit. And the final game of the week, Miami Dolphins at the Los Angeles Rams, Jonnu Smith is sit. I know Jonnu Smith, he's definitely been a decent option for this Miami Dolphin team this season. And even last week, 9.60 fantasy points, but inconsistencies are going to be there for Jonnu Smith at the tight end position. We have to see more with him and Tua over the next few weeks. When it was Tim Boyle at quarterback and Tyler Huntley, he was actually getting consistent targets and making plays. But like I said, Tyreek Hill's targets have gone up. Odell Beckham, he's back in the lineup. I think he'll get a few targets. And Jalen Waddle, he's been bad, obviously, all season long, but I believe he can't be this bad where he can't at least claim more targets. So this week at the Rams, John was a sit, and Colby Parkinson a sit for me as well, where he's pretty much the fourth or fifth option behind Cooper Kupp, behind Puka Nacua in this offense. DeMarcus Robinson emerging once again. And also Kyren Williams out of the backfield's a good receiving option. So with all those guys factored in, even though a pretty good matchup versus the Dolphins, he's a sit this week. So that's tight end start sits every matchup for week 10 of the fantasy football season.